Hello everybody, I'm Just True and welcome back to another video. So with the Best Picture nominees for 2023 having been released just a couple weeks ago and myself having seen a dozen more films from the year, I decided that it would be a perfect time to count down what my personal picks are for the top 20 best films of 2023. Now, though I have seen all of the Best Picture nominees and many other very acclaimed, very popular films from this year, there were a few that I missed, including The Taste of Things, Fast and Furious, John Wick, Mars Express, Evil Does Not Exist, The Little Mermaid remake, and many more. Most of these were because I either hadn't seen the films that came before them in the franchise or just because they didn't come to my local theater this year. I'd also like to give a special honorable mention to the film Suzumi by Makoto Shinkai. Last year I made a video counting down the best films of 2022, and in that video I had mentioned at the beginning that I wasn't able to see Suzumi. Well, since then I have seen it, and I will say that it's a phenomenal film, easily would have made my top 5 if I had seen it before I made the video. And lastly, before we get into the list, if you'd like to read my in-depth thoughts on any of these films or just keep up with whatever I'm watching throughout the year, you can find me on letterboxd.com/justtrue, where I publish reviews of every single film that I watch. Alright, so to start by counting down the 20 to 15 category, these are films that, though I would definitely recommend watching them, weren't exactly, going to go down in cinema history or anything. At number 20, I have the French legal drama Anatomy of a Fall by Justine Triet. At number 19, I have the anime jazz musical Blue Giant by Yuzuru Tachikawa. At number 18, I have the satirical drama American Fiction by Cord Jefferson. At number 17, I have the animated adventure comedy Super Mario Bros. Movie from directors Michael Jelenic and Aaron Horvath. And at number 16, I have the Quebecois supernatural comedy film that is concisely titled Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person by Ariane Louise Saiz. All of those are exceptional films. I would definitely recommend them. But if we're getting into the real meat and potatoes of this list, the films that are going to be, marking 2023 in cinema history when we look back years later, it's going to start with number 15. And at number 15, I have the film 1001 by A.V. Rockwell. This is a drama set in New York of the 1990s and early 2000s. It follows an ex-con single mother in her day-to-day struggles, as well as in some greater overarching efforts to build a better life for herself and her kid. It won the grand prize at Sundance Film Festival last year, and after watching, I can definitely see why. It's full of characters who are likable, but also very complex, with the film giving off a very wholesome feeling at sometimes, but then throwing plot twists your way at others. It's really the best of everything. Plus, it's just gorgeous on a cinematic level. I've always felt that New York is one of the most beautiful places in America, and this film captures it perfectly. It's incredible. At number 14, I have the film Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan. This is a historical, biographical film about the development of the atomic bomb, told through the perspective of scientist J. Robert Oppenheimer. Though I can't exactly call it a war film, as its perspective is very, very carefully limited to the happenings in and around Los Alamos, it still engages with a lot of the same moral dilemmas and more depressing themes that you would expect from a war film in a very wise way. It begins as a bombastic and high-energy story, almost a blockbuster, but quickly takes on a much more somber tone as the main character, Oppenheimer, is forced to reckon with the fact that his scientific work goes on not just to be a theoretical study anymore, but actually kills thousands of civilians during the war and, changes the world forever, ushering in the Cold War. Cillian Murphy plays the role very well, showing with great sensitivity, I think, the headspace of a genius man who, gets in over his head and then has to spend the rest of his life just tormented by the horror that he's brought into the world. I wouldn't be surprised if this film ends up winning Best Picture. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad. The only reason it's not higher on my own list is because of a few historical inaccuracies, plus that I think it had a lot more room for political and social commentary that wasn't really explored. It comes across as mostly weak and inoffensive in that regard, despite, covering a subject matter that has so much gravity and potential. But even so, it's 100% worth watching. At number 13, I have the film Perfect Days by Wim Wenders. Wenders is a director known for his slow, observational style, and this film is no exception. It's a fairly aimless slice of life story following a janitor in Tokyo as he roams about the city doing his work. Even, seen through the eyes of like a wage laborer like that who lives in a very tiny apartment in the film, doing menial work, Tokyo still looks like such a beautiful city, really a place that has a life of its own, and Wenders frames it wonderfully. It's not a deep or complex film, really, but rather one that's just short, simple, and sweet. We can all learn something from it with the main character being able to stay happy despite having so little. It's uplifting. At number 12, I have the film Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World by Radu Jun. This is a Romanian contemporary social drama and sort of a dark comedy film as well. Follows an ensemble of working class folks who are trying to make a living for themselves and the exasperating hurdles they encounter doing odd jobs. It's a very relevant piece of work for today, showing how modern sensibilities and socioeconomic structures are impacting people from all walks of life, and how, all people can sort of unite around that idea of like anti-establishment sticking it to the man. But it's not so simple. It is very complex, a very wise and profound film, very innovative on a structural level as well, telling these simple stories of day-to-day life in a non-linear and visually like experimental sort of way, cutting rapidly between perspectives and communicating like mood effectively just through cinematography and use of color without having to rely on dialogue as much. It's definitely not a film for everyone, but I thought it was great. At number 11, I have the film Monster by Hirokazu Koreeda. This is a Japanese coming-of-age drama, mostly about puberty, but it also ties in a lot of the other classic themes you'd expect with that genre, such as generational divides, the weight of expectations, and some modern, more general social commentary. The most unique thing about the film, I think, from a structural perspective, is how it goes back and will show the same scenario through multiple different perspectives. You see how the adult characters and the teenage characters come away with completely different interpretations of the very same events. It's a very compassionate film, too, somehow able to portray the characters who have conflicting goals, but they're both presented in an equally sympathetic light. Often it foregoes like the sense of moral grayness, moral ambiguity, and rather just goes straight towards, unconditionally loving and understanding all of the characters. You can feel that the director is, a very sympathetic guy. That's not to say it's an overly optimistic film, though. I mean, so much of growing up is like awkward, intense, even a little bit disheartening at times already. And some of the bad luck that these characters face, I mean, you would think they're cursed or something. But there's plenty of love and faith to be seen in the film. It's a good balance. All in all, it's a film that captures all sides of the human condition in a very thoughtful and compelling way. All right, now bringing us into the top 10, which I guess would be my personal picks for Best Picture nominees of the year. At number 10, we have Killers of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese. This is a historical drama about the Osage murders back in the 1920s. It was probably my most anticipated film of the year, and it definitely lived up to the hype. I grew up a couple hours from Osage County. When the original nonfiction book on which the film is based came out, it was a huge hit. It's a very important and powerful story, but one that's too often swept under the rug. So when I heard that Scorsese and these huge actors like DiCaprio and Robert De Niro were going to be adapting the story for film, I was very excited. And they did end up telling it very well. It's a huge film, like 3 hours long. It spans decades, but you're on the edge of your seat the entire time. It can be painful to watch, certainly, but it's an important reminder that these people in the history books were real, and the intensely inhumane treatment that they suffered was not that long ago. As an American, I feel like we all have to reckon with that part of our history and the impact that it still has today. So yeah, it's very resonant, and I'm glad that the story is being told. At number 9, we have Shin Kamen Rider by Hideaki Anno. This is a Japanese tokusatsu film, which is a action superhero subgenre with lots of like hand-to-hand combat and practical special effects instead of CGI. If you know me, you'll know that superhero films are like my favorite genre, and Hideaki Anno has consistently been like my favorite director of all time, and he's still working today. So this was really a delight to see him cover the genre. It's not as deep as some of his other films, but rather just a bright, colorful, bombastic film that's just a thrill from start to finish. Fantastic choreography, great visual effects, production design, and everything else you could want in an action show. Just a great way to kill time, watch some good guys beat up some bad guys and save the day. It's nothing groundbreaking, but I have no complaints. I loved every minute of it. At number 8 is the film Past Lives, directed by Celine Song. This is a romance film focused on a woman who immigrates from South Korea at a young age, makes a life for herself in New York City, gets married, but is unexpectedly reunited with her childhood sweetheart for one fateful week. It's a very low-key film, but through the dialogue and subtle performances, it manages to say so much on the nature of love, longing, destiny, misconnections, and so much more. Delicately dissecting what it really means to be human, to find your place in the world and care for others. It's a true work of art, something that resonates on a deeply emotional level as you watch it, and it'll leave an impact on you that lasts long after the credits have rolled. You can't help yourself from thinking back on it over and over again, mulling over all of the various themes and dilemmas proposed. But it really transcends words. I mean, go watch it for yourself, you'll see. At number 7, we have the film May December by Todd Haynes. This film seems to have spawned more controversy than any other this year, mostly due to the subject matter. It's a fictional drama, but it follows a young man who was groomed and sexually abused as a child and still maintains an intimate relationship with his abuser even into adulthood. It's a very dark, intense, and haunting narrative, but the way it's presented is very engrossing. It leaves you rubbernecking. You just can't tear your eyes away. In the end, I think it shows well the psychological toll that something like that must have on a person, how pervasive and traumatic having gone through that abuse can be, as well as the more minute details of how so many, these innocent children end up finding themselves in those situations to begin with. But on a more metatextual level, it also asks a bunch of challenging questions about sensationalist media and true crime stories. Why is it that we seek out these stories of human suffering? Why is it that we find this sort of stuff sort of darkly entertaining? Is that a good thing for our society? I don't know, but I can't deny the story is well told. At number 6 is the film Bottoms by Emma Seligman. This is a high school comedy film about these two loser kids who start a fight club at their school in a scheme to gain popularity for themselves. This genre of stupid teen comedies seems to have been abandoned most part in the 2020s. It's sort of a thing of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, but I haven't really seen much of it in my lifetime. That said, I'm glad to know that films like this are still being made occasionally, and not just as low-effort cash grabs, but as these genuinely creative, clever, and spirited works. There's not too much to say about it on a critical level. It's written well, directed well, the cast does a great job, they all clearly have chemistry with each other. But more than anything, it's just a plain and simple good time at the movies. I can't think of something better. At number 5 is the film Theater Camp, from co-directors Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman. This is a mockumentary comedy about the counselors of a theater-focused youth summer camp. I wasn't exactly a theater kid growing up. I mean, I definitely never went to any summer camp for it, but I worked backstage in a few plays in school and ran in a lot of the same circles, so even still, this film was a treat to watch. It pokes fun at a lot of stereotypes around the performing arts and the theater kid archetype, and the disparate array of different folks that end up getting into the theater as well. And it's a scene that I'm very familiar with, so I was laughing the whole time. Above all, though, it's just a very heartwarming film, getting to watch this ragtag group of folks band together to put on a show and, pass the love of theater on to a new generation. I loved it. At number 4 is The Boy and the Heron by Hayao Miyazaki. Miyazaki has been a titan of industry and animation for so long, acting as the head of Studio Ghibli. It's crazy to think that this is his ultimate final work, and even more crazy to think that I'm alive at this same moment getting to see it in theaters. I wonder if this is what folks felt like walking out of the first Star Wars screening or something. I mean, cinema history is being written before our eyes. It's a fantasy adventure film, beautifully animated and easy to watch as a simple fairy tale, but viewing it in context and diving a bit deeper into its themes, you begin to see all of the real world symbolism and parallels within. It's clearly a semi autobiographical work from Miyazaki, with the main character having a backstory very similar to his own life story, and many of the magical, grand scale conflicts within the film paralleling developments within the animation industry and Studio Ghibli specifically. It really is his magnum opus, very thoughtful and emotional, but also something that I imagine will be studied in future film classes. At number 3 is Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos. This is a sci-fi black comedy film, one that's really hard to pin down into one genre, but if I had to describe it, I'd say it has uh, there, the galvanizing unorthodoxy and dark themes of Frankenstein, but with the whimsical atmosphere and visual inventiveness of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That's what I wrote in my review on Letterboxd. Check it out. It's filled with all sorts of colorful and complex characters who find themselves in this array of zany situations, ones that are entertaining to watch, but also reveal much about our own world when you look at it a bit closer. It's truly a film like no other, a smart, funny, creative masterpiece. At number 2 is The Zone of Interest by Jonathan Glazer. This is a Holocaust film made by English, German, and Polish filmmakers. Needless to say, it's a very emotionally heavy film, not just because of the content on screen, but mostly because it forces us to remember the depth and intensity of these atrocities that were committed against human beings on such a mass scale. It's really devastating. The film itself is unlike many war films in that it's not very explicitly brutal, but rather focuses on the day-to-day lives of the architects of the Nazis behind the genocide and on the banality of their evil. The commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Hess, on whom the film is focused, you'll watch as he's relaxing outside with his family, living in luxury and enjoying all these riches that's been stolen from his murdered neighbors. And meanwhile, you hear gunshots and crying, like just over the wall of the camp, just out of view. You know, they can all hear it, but they just don't care. It's also miserable, and yet the whole time we're forced to remember that these Nazis were real people. The evil they committed was not always psychopathic, but rather coldly procedural, and on a fundamental level, nothing beyond any of our capabilities. Many academics already have written about the diffusion of responsibility during the Holocaust, and I mean, I don't have anything better to say on the subject, but for me, nothing I've ever seen has really driven home that point more than this film. It reminds us that the never again phrase is more than a warning. It's something that will require constant vigilance and action, even today. And lastly, what I would say is the greatest film to come out of 2023, out of all the films I've seen this year, is number 1, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, from co-directors Joaquim Dos Santos, Justin K. Thompson, and Kemp Powers. It's easy to say that I love this film, like, just because I've been a lifelong Spider-Man fan, and it's beautifully hand-drawn animation. All the sci-fi elements at play are wonderfully creative, and the way that they're used in the action scenes is just, like, cool as hell. And all of that's true, but it's barely the tip of the iceberg explaining why this film speaks to me so much. I think that what Everything Everywhere All at Once did for people last year, this film did for me. I've always thought that the multiverse concept has a lot of symbolic and dramatic potential, and I've been waiting for a film that could use it well to communicate a truly powerful message about the choices we make in life, the anxiety of decision making, the fear of missing out. And I never thought that it would be an action film to do it, a Spider-Man film, but here we are. All the characters here are distinctly different people, all in different stages of their life, and across this vast array of universes and timelines, yet they still all face this same common struggle that's answering the question, who do I want to be in this world? It's something I've ruminated on a lot lately, and something I'm sure I'll revisit time and time again. I don't think anyone ever comes up with one concrete answer to it. And honestly, it's scary thinking that the same one choice can open new doors for you and lock shut others at the same time. But even so, there's something very inspiring about knowing the wide array of possibilities out there for me, the many different versions of myself that wait in the future, depending on what I do now. And there's something very comforting in knowing that no matter where I end up, there'll always be people I can talk to who have faced the same struggles I have. This film has helped me remember that. All right, so there are my picks for the top 20 best films of 2023. Do you agree? Did I miss something that you loved? Do you have a recommendation for me that I might have missed completely, not even seen it? Well, leave a comment below, like the video. I really appreciate the support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.